All right. And we are live.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, hello, everyone. We're going to give everybody some time to get in like we normally do. Make sure that everything is popping and moving the right way. Looks like we're live on LinkedIn and YouTube.
Lovely. Lovely.
Yeah, that's right. The notifications were sent out. If you subscribe, you'll get the and subscribe and click the notification bell. You'll get those notifications. Um, and you won't miss the very beginning. Or if you're checking this out live, you'll be able to watch it later if you subscribe. So
There's been some subscribers. They've been like, they like it.
yeah. It's this is one of those like the things that we talk about. I feel like they're not like the sexy topics, but people are starting to pay more attention, and I think the more we do it, the more consistent we are. Hopefully, the more viewers we get, and we also want viewers that are engaged, like people that want to comment, ask questions, please do that. And we are getting some comments from people, even, after. We're getting comments during the live right now, and we're getting comments after as well. So we want to, keep that going. We encourage that. Please feel free to comment, like, and share what we're going to be doing today. So, what do we got on the docket today, Snuff?
Puerto Rico and what's happening in that lovely island and what's happening down there in Bermuda, Turks and Caicos, Dominican Republic. Fiona is, she's not kind. She is not being kind.
Yeah, no. There's a I meant to find it to put it up on the screen. There's a hip hop artist, one of my favorite MCs, in my opinion, maybe the best MC ever. I'm tied. I've got my number one tied it between two. So I'll just
What's
share
going to
it.
be the tiebreaker? I want to know. Like, how you going to, or are
I don't
you?
think I need to. I'm just gonna say I've
Good.
got two number ones, and it's just the way that it is for me. So it's Yasin Bey,
Mhm.
otherwise known as Mos Def, and then Black Thought from the Roots. Now I grew up in Philadelphia, so and I grew up with the Roots like in high school, like before they became popular with Jimmy Fallon and all that. Like we were quoting and singing and doing Roots lyrics like way before that. Seeing them at the Trocadero, in Philadelphia, all that. So Black Thought has always been one of my favorite lyricists, and then Yasin Bey, Mos Def, who was also coupled up with Talib Kweli. Um, Mos Def is also one of my other favorite lyricists, and he's got this song way from back in the day. I think I was maybe like in my teenage years still,
Hmm.
um,
Little
called
Asian.
Young Asian, called New World Water. New World Water. And one of the lyrics, he goes, New World Water makes the tide rise high. Come in and we'll make your house go by. Fools then upset the old man river, made them carry slave ships and fed them dead. I'm not gonna say the word. Um, but yeah, there's this theory about that kind of floats out there, and there's no real way to I think confirm or deny that it's true. But if you look at the way that the hurricanes kind of go from one part of the world to the other, it's similar to the slave trade. But the other part of that is that's the natural current and flow of the water, like across the Atlantic Ocean. That's just naturally how all those different currents come together. So if you were going to just get in a boat off the west coast of Africa and let yourself just go with the flow, you would wind up in the West Indies. So part of it is just the way that the earth is. It's just the way that it flows. But I always found that lyric or that line interesting, that the seas are angry, the ocean is angry, and
There's a
and
right.
yep. So that every time I think of a hurricane or anything like that, that line always comes in my head. Fools and upset the old man river. Um, and New World Water will make your house go by. So this is back in like the late '90s, early 2000s that Mos Def Yasin Bey now um, was talking about this type of stuff, and so it's not new. I think from a hip hop culture, a Black African American community perspective, we've been, I think, a little bit more aware of the environmental changes and how it impacts our community than maybe some others have. And I just wanted to kind of like put that out there and share it because I think that people think there's some people that are now getting into this conversation that think they know everything and that they're more aware, and they're not. Like there have been concerns coming from our community for quite some time, and but we've been asking for and looking for solutions and help. So that's why we're here. Yeah. So with that being said, we're going to talk about Hurricane Fiona, what she's done so far, and how it's impacting the residents on Puerto Rico, specifically farmers, from a perspective of power outages, loss of water, and what are people doing to recover. And even we're going to even go into Maria a little bit, talk about how people had to recover from Maria because Fiona is so new that we don't really have enough data or information to figure out how are people responding. Not yet, and we probably won't for several months. But so we're going to look at Maria to learn a little bit. You know, that's what I said on a previous live. Is when you're into risk engineering and trying to avoid catastrophes, the best thing to do is to go to what happened before. So we're going to do a little bit of that today too. Um, all good, Snuff. Let
Yeah.
me bring the banner up.
There you go.
How's my Wi-Fi looking?
When I look at you down at the bottom, you seem okay. When I look at you at the top, you're a little pixelated, but I can still hear you clearly.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay,
Weird.
it's interesting. It was doing so well right before we got on.
Yeah, for a half hour.
For a half hour, yeah, doing fine. And then next thing you know, um, let me try to just switch. Looks like I'm okay. Okay,
Cool.
the show must go on.
As it should.
The show must go on. Um, this is a topic that I wanted to really discuss. You know, I um, shared a little bit on LinkedIn and in previous lives about my background as a natural catastrophe risk engineer, and that specifically, you know, we got a comment. Ah,
CB.
nice. CB's back. Hey, CB, you saved me, man, 2 weeks ago, or you know, I'm not sure gender, so I'm assuming. My apologies if I'm incorrect, but nonetheless, CB, you saved me a couple weeks ago when you caught me on that muted mic. So thank you very much. I still I still appreciate that. I still appreciate that, and we're glad to see that you're back and hanging out with us again today. Thank you. Um, but for those of you that are new, don't really know what this is about, what this live is about, who I am, and who Snuffy is as well. I'm Aja, and this is my comrade, team member, accomplice, Snuffy G. And we are on a mission to figure out how can we grow whatever it is we want to grow, wherever we want to grow it, and especially taking into account the impacts from climate change, environmental changes, natural disasters, especially. We feel that we have to start growing differently, using different methods, different strategies, so that we can protect the food supply, um, maintain a level of sovereignty, and not have to rely on things being kind of engineered and delivered to us all the time. There should be, from a local level, control over our food supply and the type of food that we consume and eat. That's to me, of optimum importance. So that's what we're about here. Um, and as I was saying before, this hurricane thing, it kind of really was on my mind. I was actually in Puerto Rico early last week. I was in San Juan for a few days, and to realize that, I left maybe, I think I left on Monday, and then by Sunday, this hurricane made landfall, and just picturing everything that I saw, not having power, not also having water. We're gonna talk about that. It, it's devastating. There were people there that I met, that I engaged with, that I know are impacted and infected by this. So I'm thinking about that as well. But my background was in natural catastrophe risk engineering. And hold on, Denise, I'm just going to switch this Wi-Fi because it's driving me bonkers. Please stay with us. Apologies for the delay. I'm going to try to switch and see what happens here.
I just muted because my dog is having a dream.
I don't know if I should try to switch my Wi-Fi or not. I'm tempted to. If you're following us right now, if you could chat, throw a comment out. How's it coming across? Is the sound okay? Is it pixelated? What's it looking like? Do we need to switch up our Wi-Fi signal here? Because I'd hate for people to have to suffer through garbled communication. We got a few people on, so any feedback is greatly appreciated. So let me know if I need to switch it up. If not, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, you're a little pixelated, but your voice is coming fine. You're not even breaking.
All right, and really, we're looking at the screen. We're looking at what I'm sharing on the screen, not so much my face. So, good. Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate that. Okay, appreciate that, Nicole. Thank you. All right, so moving on then. So, just to share a little bit about why I'm talking about this, hurricanes. I have a background as a natural catastrophe risk engineer. Worked for some of the larger insurance companies back in the day, helped to develop their engineering standards on how to evaluate damages and mitigate them, stop them, minimize them, from things like hurricanes, floods, hail, etc. Wrote a lot of the engineering standards for these large companies, trained a lot of the engineers. So I took a step away from that life because I really didn't like working for the insurance company, and I wanted to do something different. So I'm living my new dream, my new life now. But this increase in natural catastrophes and disasters has just got me, talking about these things again when I didn't really think that I would have to as much. But I want to share what I know. I want to share my experiences, because there's a lot of things that people can do to protect themselves, their farms, their homes, their businesses, and they just may not have access to that knowledge because a lot of that information, a lot of that research has been done at the the larger commercial insurance level and hasn't really been available for free to the public. We're starting to see some of it now, but there's so much more out there that we could be doing. So I want to talk about this, bring these things up, and let people know that you don't just have to kind of hope that this doesn't happen. I think a lot of people just kind of rely on hopefully it won't hit us. Hopefully it won't make landfall here. And there's more than hope. You can actually be proactive. You can actually do things. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with Fiona. Talk a little bit about what happened in Maria, because as I mentioned before, the best way to be a risk engineer or to figure out how to protect yourself now is to learn about what happened in the past. So we're going to do that too. But as most people already know, Hurricane Fiona made landfall. It was Category 1. It's Category 1 hurricane. Made landfall on Sunday, and the entire island of Puerto Rico lost power, 100% out, gone, and for quite some time. I wanted to just talk about that just a little bit, but even before it actually made landfall, Puerto Rico lost power. This wasn't something that happened, after landfall. It was there were issues, electrical issues, infrastructure issues, way before Fiona even made landfall. I don't know if a lot of people, knew about that. This picture here is a picture of a banana crop that's been completely just demolished, wiped away as a result of Fiona. You got some other issues in regards to who's in charge of the power grid, and this is something that I think we should take away from, those of us that are located on the mainland in the USA that feel like, oh, this is a Puerto Rico problem, or it's a Dominican Republic problem. No, no. These infrastructure issues are prevalent throughout the entire United States. The same governance structure that colonized Puerto Rico and took over Puerto Rico is the same. They're the same people that are making decisions, same system that's making decisions here as well. Jackson, Mississippi showed us that, a couple months ago. It really wasn't, it was a couple of failed pumps knocked out the entire city of Jackson. Similar to what's happening in Puerto Rico, the infrastructure is just mad old. It's crazy old. They're still relying on overhead power lines. They've got, you know, power lines that have been, and especially if you're thinking about hurricanes, there are ways to have power lines underground. You can run them underground, encase them so they don't get impacted by water damage, and you don't have to worry about trees knocking them down. But that takes a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort. And the you can see here it says Luma Energy, the private consortium that was hired in 2020 to handle transmission, has failed to satisfy critics as power outages have increased in duration this year, even apart from the destructive storms, according to a report last month from the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau.
I mean, the same thing happened with Texas, right? With their grid, they're privatized too. So, like you said, it's not just a Puerto Rico not just a Puerto Rico problem, but also here in the States too. Same.
Yeah,
Same.
I mean, the next paragraph talks about FEMA, same type of management system that we deal with here. Like when Sandy occurred, Ike, Katrina, FEMA, you have to rely on FEMA. So a major plan to modernize the island's electric system, funded with billions. I think it was 12 billion, if my memory serves me correctly, 12 billion, but billions of dollars from the U.S. Federal Emergency Management System, FEMA, as a response to Hurricane Maria, has been slow to get started.
But why? I don't understand. I wish there was more on that. Slow.
Yeah, it needs to be thoroughly investigated. I mean, I've seen from some of the people that I follow on social media that are actually, in the activist community, Puerto Rican residents or, left and now live here, in the mainland. They are begging people not to donate directly to government agencies because the money won't get to them. They're saying, please find independent local, organizations that are doing the grassroots work to donate your money to, because if you give it to the government, who's to say how long it's going to take for us to get it? And these are examples. It's not about having access to the money. It's about who's in charge of it and what's their intent and how are they going to, and how quickly and how focused are they going to be with implementing these changes. And if they're not really affected by it and it's not really their thing, they're not going to make those changes. So it's disappointing to see that the money has been placed there, but the action hasn't actually happened. The extent of Fiona's destruction remains unclear. The storm's outer bands continue to drop copious amounts of rain and threaten to swell waterways already breaching their banks and causing landslides in the mountains. Now, when I was there earlier this week, I was there a week before Hurricane Fiona hit. I was walking through one of the national parks on a tour, and the gentleman that was there, his name is Frankie. I sent him a text wishing him and his family well. Hope he's all good. Give an excellent explanation of the agriculture in the area and how back in the day when sugar plantations were prevalent and they were using enslaved Africans and enslaved indigenous people to farm sugarcane, they were wiping out the forest. So it was a lot of deforestation that happened in Puerto Rico. And when you take away the trees in the forest that have deep rooting systems, and all that remains is overused, sugarcane plantations, when it rains, you're going to have issues with mudslides, landslides, etc., because there's nothing there to hold the earth together. So what they've been trying to do to kind of mitigate that and to repair it is to grow bamboo. Bamboo grows very fast. It has very deep rooting structure, so it's quick, something that can quickly help. But one of the pros of hurricanes from Frankie's perspective was that it knocks away all the dead stuff and allows for this new you know, forestation to start to recover. So things come back. It will recover from the forest perspective, and it will usually come back the way that it was before sugarcane kind of decimated it. So um, they're trying to, from an activist perspective, trying to maintain a lot more of Puerto Rico to maintain that natural forest, rainforest, topography to avoid some of these issues, these landslides and mudslides in the mountain areas. So moving on, there was a few things that I just wanted to point out in some of these articles, and then we'll keep it moving. Since 2020, Congress has appropriated some 12 billion. That's what it was for the
There's your
project.
quote. Yep.
The largest allocation of FEMA funds in the agency's history, but bureaucratic delays have hobbled the work modernizing the grid.
We
So,
can't even help ourselves. Like we are in our own way about
yeah.
things.
As I mentioned before, hours before Tropical Storm Fiona. So when people say tropical storm versus hurricane, it just means that it hasn't. So tropical storm means it's not strong enough to be a hurricane yet. It's the step right before a hurricane. Once you get over 74 miles an hour of sustained wind, there's lots of different terminologies about hurricanes. So people will throw out mile an hour and all this. You need to be very careful about, are you talking about sustained wind speed or gusts or what? Because they're totally different. But nonetheless, tropical storm means it's just not the wind speed isn't fast enough to make it into the hurricane category. So this is like pre-hurricane, power's going out, hadn't even made landfall. They're already seeing issues. By Sunday morning, all of Puerto Rico was in the dark.
Hmm. I remember being in Puerto Rico talking about their grid and lack of stability for electricity. I remember being in Puerto Rico maybe about 8 years ago now, before Maria, before Fiona, and we lost power for like 24 hours. And yes, we were on Vieques, the small island, but they're like, yeah, this happens all the time. It happens like at least like once a week. That I don't know if it's a conservation thing or is it just the way that it is. And I was like, huh, that's very interesting. And I'm sure if it was happening on Vieques, it was happening on the mainland of Puerto Rico too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's I think it was Mia Motley, who's the prime minister of Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
She is pushing to have solar panels on the roofs of all of the citizens of Barbados because they need to be able to have sovereignty in their own power supply. I
Yep.
mean, that's the thing. It's, if you think about, how reliant we are on one entity to provide power to all the companies, all the homes, all the farms. One company is responsible for that. And I just think those times are over, in my opinion. Being able to be sovereign, getting your own solar panels or your own way of to generate power, those are things that we should be focusing on. And I love that she's going in that direction because it really gives a level of sovereignty to those individuals if they can maintain their own power supply. um, it's costly. It's there's a lot of people that say that this is all about just the solar panel industry making money. There are no good guys. I'm not saying, I'm not naive in that there are no good guys, but systems and technology still need to be in place to help people. So sometimes you have to try. What did they say? Eat the meat, spit out the bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is a map of the power supply in Puerto Rico currently. This was just updated this morning at 9:41 a.m. Customers, there are about still 1 million customers that are still out of power. You can see from the map. Here's this little legend down there at the bottom. The very dark maroon is 100% outage, and then the kind of red colors are about 60%. So San Juan is right there. Um, Major international airports there. The main hospital is there. Apparently, they have power restored. They were probably relying on backup power generation, but that doesn't do 100% capacity. It's major life systems, the fire protection, the ERs, in some of the surgical areas. They'll have access to that, but the outpatient help, people that need to go in, for some sort of medical treatment, you can't come in. we don't have the power for you right now.
This is strictly just power? This isn't water,
This
too?
is strictly power. This is strictly power. Yeah, we'll get on the water next. And yeah, and you can see, the islands are 100% out. Most of the west and the north, and most of the hurricanes, when they come from this direction and hit the southern areas.
Mm.
So these are the places that get the brunt of it, all along here. And because this storm is moving so slow, Fiona is taking her
Mm.
sweet time,
Mhm.
dropping water all throughout the Caribbean. You know, it's kind of like a mixed bag. She's now a category 4. Started out as a tropical storm, moved to a cat 1 by the time it hit Puerto Rico, and now is a category 4. The slower it is, the more the warming of the ocean will create an increase in wind speed. So that's the speed of, the cyclone itself. But then there's also the traveling speed, how fast it's moving. So depending on where you are, you get hit by how fast it's moving plus the speed of the cyclone. Um, so if it moves faster, that might make it worse from a wind perspective because you're moving faster and you're spinning. But if you move too slow, then you dump more rain. So you don't win either way. If she moves fast or moves slow, it's going to be damage one way or the other. Um, okay, so we see this is a few days later, still majority of the island out of power. Moving on to water. Now, the Puerto Rico has lost more than power. The vast majority of people have no clean water. With no electricity, there's no power to run the filtration systems, no power to pump water into homes. That means no clean water for drinking, bathing, or flushing toilets. Only about 40% of the households currently have clean running water.
Mm.
And I really wonder what they mean when they say clean.
Right.
They really mean clean.
Like, what standard is that?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we had read earlier that they still boil their water too, just in
Yeah,
case.
right down here, and you can see it's under a boil
Oh,
water advisory.
yeah.
So
Excuse me.
this is just some perspective from Maria. When Category 4 Hurricane Maria slammed into Puerto Rico in 2017, it took months to restore the municipal water services, forcing people to rely entirely on bottled water, or for those more desperate, to bathe and drink from natural sources that had raw sewage floating in them.
Mm.
Even a year later, so a year after Maria, a survey found that 50% of Puerto Ricans reported their households could not get enough clean water to drink. And for now, some of those are still on a boil water ban. And we've got that going on here in the States already. Like you just mentioned, in Massachusetts, where we are, town of Mansfield's on boil water ban.
Yeah.
Attleboro, I think you said they had a drought issue. Even Bridgewater, they're on a boil water. They've been on boil water for quite some time. These things are not just in Puerto Rico; they're prevalent here. So when we start to see hurricanes, floods, or other types of catastrophes impact the mainland, the continental U.S., we're going to suffer the same types of things. And people are aware that the infrastructure needs help. I mean, we know this. That was part of the bill that Joe Biden just got through, was to try to improve our infrastructure. It's great, but again, it's great to have access to the money. But if you don't move quickly, if you don't move with intent, and if you're worried about lining your pockets versus actually doing what needs to be done, these things don't get fixed, and we keep repeating these catastrophes. So, but how does that actually impact the farmer? So this was a research study that some people put together after Maria. So this is us going back in the past to see what happened in the past and how can we learn from it in the future. So farmers across the globe, as this research study says, are experiencing compounding shocks that make evident the need to better understand potential drivers and barriers to strengthen adaptive capacity. I hate when they write things like this. Just simplify that. Like as Joe Madison, a radio show host that I listen to from time to time, would say, put it where the goats can get it. Like, don't
I know.
don't be so up here with it all. Everybody's experiencing it, and there are potential issues that are causing us not to be able to get our shit together. That's what this really should say. This is especially true. This is especially true in the context of a disaster where disruption in the natural and built environment hinders livelihood strategies and exposes the underlying dynamics that perpetuate vulnerability and natural hazards. So those that are most vulnerable will be impacted the worst. It did say that this study used data from 405 farmers. So a nice,
That's a good response rate.
that's a good response. And they were surveyed 8 months after Maria. So that's the other thing that I want to point out to people is, and we'll see a little bit more of this as we scroll down and get into this, is how long does it take for people to get themselves back up and running? It's not just, oh, we got to wait for the power company to get their stuff together, or we got to wait for the water to come back on. That's when you can actually start doing the work. Like, you can't bring in tools and equipment and start, repairing things when you don't have power to run that equipment with, or you don't have water and sewage that people can actually work safely in. Like, so first you got to get these things settled, and then the people can come in. If you're relying on insurance, then the claim adjusters start coming in, and they'll try to move fast, but they're going to want to do it right. And sometimes they can't move that fast to do it the right way. And by right, I mean making sure they don't have to pay as much as possible. So you'll get your claim if you have insurance, and then you'll maybe, months from now, get your check. Your check will come. You'll have to then hire or find contractors that will do the work. It will be more expensive because everybody and their mother is looking for the same thing. So with demand, increases cost. And then you'll be up and running. Maybe, 12 months, 16 months, you'll be back up. Meanwhile, especially if you're growing food or plant medicine, meanwhile, your customers needed food. They needed plant medicine. So they had to go somewhere else. And they may not come back. You're on mute now, so I don't know what you might have just said. What was that?
Oh, yeah, same thing that you said. We said it at the same time. And they may not even come back.
They may not come back. So, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we scroll through this. I'm going too fast here. Here we go. Prior to Maria, agriculture in Puerto Rico was experiencing advancements in production and its recognition as an important sector in a place where around 85% of food is imported. So they were progressing. 85% of the food was imported. That's actually good compared to other countries in the West Indies, like Jamaica, Haiti, where 90% of their food gets imported from somewhere else. So to have this at 85 is actually, good compared to others. However, Hurricane Maria changed this trajectory, and the Puerto Rico Department of Ag reported that 80% of agricultural infrastructure and production were lost due to the winds and rains of Hurricane Maria. So 80% setback after Maria. We don't know what it's going to be with Fiona. Hopefully not as bad, but it will have an impact. So that's a huge amount. I mean, especially if you're making headwinds, you're moving in a great direction, you're starting to bring more of the ownership of food production to the island, and then smack, it puts you back to, close to square one, if not at square one. Next one says the 2017 hurricane season made evident those underlying conditions, including Caribbean governance structures that reflect neo-colonial relationships and perpetuate the vulnerability of social ecological systems. So basically, that's just saying this shows that colonialism is impacting other countries, and it needs to be rectified. So it's a social system issue.
How does I know that we don't know the solution or whatever, but I mean, how do we even start talking about protecting things? Okay, yes, we can help. Like, the power grid needs to be a little bit better, but when it comes to agricultural stuff, I mean, everyone's at the mercy of climate and mercy of the hurricanes. So yeah, I mean, this happens. What did you say? Every 5 years, your tour guide said that a nice hurricane comes in and kind of wipes it all out. So how do people even begin to protect themselves from that kind of thing? Because I feel like this is just going to keep on going and going and get worse. Like, well, do you know any real solutions, or anyone working on some real solutions?
Well, I know that there are in this actual research talks a little bit about what what's working and what's not working. And one of the things that they say is working is the individual doing it on your own isn't working.
Mm.
Trying to worry about your own farm isn't working. Doing it from the colonial structure of FEMA coming in and supposedly funding money isn't working. So you've got two extremes: the individual and then the governance structure. Or I won't say the governance structure. I'll say the social structure. So there has to be some sort of in between where this stuff needs to be, you know, controlled and implemented from. I would suggest, or I would think, that smaller local groups, local communities, can do a lot together. So this could be, I think there are like 78 towns in Puerto Rico. There's a bunch of mayors. Like, so, and I'm not saying that 78 is the key number, but if you at least drill down to those smaller entities and gave them the funding and gave them the access to the information and the knowledge and the technology to make decisions that's best for their local community, I think we could avoid a lot of this. So I don't think it's one person working on their own. Like, there's some people that are like, I'll just DIY it and do my own and have my own little, bunker. That may help just you, but that doesn't help the system and the community that support you and that you still will need to rely on. And I think when it comes to, FEMA and federal intervention, that's not working either. So to me, it's local, community based, getting together, like co-ops.
Yeah.
Things like that. Because there's stuff we can do. And especially if you have access to the money, you can buy physical things and construct. You can make structures that can withstand hurricane force winds. You can install flood barriers. You can change the terrain so that mudslides don't occur. You can, there are things that you can have solar panels that will still provide power, pumps that are attached to solar panels so that they'll still provide water, water flow, etc. There are things that people are out there doing. It's just needing to come together at a smaller local level to do it. So that's my thought. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think all these. I think what I got out of that whole thing was, okay, we have to come together, and we also need money. And Puerto Rico isn't very rich. It's rich in other resources, but not rich in money or money flow. You were just saying that they're having uprisings about American investors coming in and taking all of the stuff. So I mean, the people never really get it. So I mean, you can't do anything without money. So how do we even start talking about the influx of money and preventing some of the things that are happening? I don't know.
I think, go ahead.
It's frustrating, and the people in Puerto Rico have dealt with so much over the decades, centuries, that I just don't know any type of solution. And we talked earlier, and I don't even know if statehood is a solution, or independence, or whatever they're grappling with to become more independent and more sovereign. Like, do they hitch their wagon to us officially? Does that even help them? Or is it just exposes them more to more of the same that's happening now?
Great questions. I don't know. I think we've got past history where smaller communities, smaller tribes, susus, co-ops, can pull resources together and get funding from the local community. So that's kind of where it is. We've got people on social media begging for funding, but don't send it to the government. Don't send it to FEMA.
I would never send it to the government. That's just me.
Send it to these local entities that are doing the grassroots work, because that's how you get the funding into the hands of those that have the best intent and the best knowledge of what needs to be done. I mean, it's hard for me all the way over here to suggest what needs to be done in Puerto Rico. If I'm not there, I'm not part of the community, I'm not asking them how it impacts, what do you need, etc. And I feel like a lot of people are just trying to like throw money and go just overhaul the electrical system.
Fix it.
It that it's going to take a bit more than that. In the end, if you really want to solve the problem for the future and provide sovereignty, which I think is really what people don't want, that they want to maintain the status quo. They want people to be reliant on the capitalistic structure behind power and water and food. And in my opinion, my personal belief system, the way that I would like to see the world is that those things should be handled at the local community level, and not relied upon at a federal government level. So that's just me. Moving on though. So it does say that this last paragraph here, the adoption of agricultural practices and management strategies such as farm diversification of products and energy sources, among others, allow farmers to offset the impacts of the changing climate. So basically, it's just saying diversifying what you can grow, having different energy sources are one of the things that people can do, the two of the things that people can do to try to, negate or reduce the impact of all these climate changes. But further down, it gives a little bit more information on specifically what farmers said were the issues. And I wanted to cover that too, as well. I'm going too fast. Here we go. All right. So it says that from all the responses that they got from 405 farmers, the top 10 words mentioned in the farmers' responses to their open ended question of what are the top obstacles to recovery were lack, insurance, seeds, agricultural, electrical, energy, economic, laborers, and water. All things that were, these were words that were used to say these are things that are obstacles. So if I had to put some context around it, lack of insurance, lack of electricity, lack of water, lack of manpower to help, these are the things that people are looking for. And these things can be done at the local level if given access to the funding and a smaller system to kind of, implement and do all these things. I wanted to also show kind of an example here when it comes to one of those words. We talked about this at the beginning about insurance. As I mentioned to those that might just be joining, my background is in natural catastrophe risk engineering. I worked for large commercial insurance companies that insured multi-billion-dollar properties, and they would have engineers like myself that would go out and come up with physical ways that you could protect your business from hurricane, flood. So there's knowledge out there. We've been, I've been trained on how to do this since 2002, and there was knowledge before I even started. And I even developed some engineering guidance to help and train other people. So this information is out there. There are things that you can do. And one of the things I like to point out, because I work for the insurance company, so I know kind of how they work. I know what they're great at, and I know what they're not great at. And it says here in Puerto Rico, agricultural insurance is mostly managed by the Corporation de Seguros Agrícolas of the local Department of Ag. Obtaining payments from the insurance was specifically mentioned numerous times as an obstacle in our analysis. So basically, getting that claim check, file a claim, you were covered, but getting that check sent to you, it takes a very long time. For example, one farmer noted, I had about an acre of yotia insured, and the insurance paid after 7 months. I could not recover any of my yotia. 7 months to get a check. You've got multiple harvests that take place within 7 months. That's loss of income, etc. What were you saying, Denise?
And also too, sorry to just throw it in there, but these insurance companies will cut you off if you don't pay your premium on time. But they expect you to stay, okay for 7 months. Is everyone all right? Is everyone okay? So what's good for you, you can't wait. You need your premium on time, and if you don't, 2 days after the premium's due, your insurance is canceled. But these people who are losing their crops have to wait 7 months. Come on, you have the money, pay it out. Stop being like this. Now you just devastated them, not just for a year, but like we were saying, for years to come. Mm.
Yeah, it, that it's typical that your claim will take a long time for you to get it. There are some insurance companies that do better than others at processing that stuff very quickly. I remember there was a client that I had in Tulane University in New Orleans who literally was crying with happiness because it didn't take us so long to get the check to her, because she's comparing, other experiences that she had. And after Katrina, the fact that she had that she was reimbursed with her claim check, they started this new program where they were able to get people their money very quickly, which was a great thing for this particular company to do at the time. But this isn't typical. There are a plethora of insurance companies. Each one of them move at their own speed. Most of them are very concerned about giving you the smallest check possible. So they're going to take their sweet time evaluating your loss, how long it took, etc. And then you have to wait for the check to get there. The check gets there. You then have to go out and and work with the contractors or
Mhm.
that are going to actually do the work. The cost of the work is going to be a lot more, especially one, if you're on an island, and two, after a natural disaster, because demand goes up. So
Mhm.
supply materials go up. You're not going to be able to make that check stretch as much as you wanted it to. You might be able to recover. That's going to be at about 12 months or more by the time you're back up and running. So 12 months, imagine that you're down for 12 months. Meanwhile, your customers that need food, need plant medicine, have been forced to go somewhere else. No matter how much they love you, you've seen they've been coming to you for years. You know their kids. You're the only person that's within a certain distance, so it works out great. They're still going to have to go find someone else. They have to. And at that point, will they come back? Some of them might, most of them won't. And that's actually what we found, is that the majority of businesses go out of after a disaster happens. They may get their claim check, they may be back up and running, but the majority of them are out of business 2 or 3 years later because they lost their customer base.
Right.
They lost their market share. So that's why I always say to people, please, if you can get insurance, do it. It's great, but don't rely on it. There are so many things that you can do to protect your farm. This isn't something that's just happening in Puerto Rico. There's vulnerabilities here in the U.S., especially when it comes to hurricanes in Florida, Texas, all along the eastern coast. There are things that you can do, whether you're outdoor growing or you're indoor. Even if you're indoors, there's still things you have to consider and focus on. So if you are, if your interest is piqued, if you're concerned, please reach out to us. We do free consultations. I'll jump on the phone with you for about 20, 30 minutes, learn more about your farm, offer up some solutions as best as I can with the information that you give me. And we can even go further and help you out and come on site and do an evaluation as well. That's my mode of operation. It's something I enjoy doing, is getting out there at the site, seeing what's going on, looking at it from my perspective based on the loss history and experiences that I've had, and pointing out to you things that you might need to worry about, prioritizing them, because you might not be able to do everything all at once, but prioritizing the biggest issues, and then helping you figure out a plan to move forward, whether that be a physical change to your structure, buying some sort of flood barriers, getting an emergency response plan in place, that is just something that you can do with the people you have on staff. All of these things can help to get you back up and running a lot quicker, so you're not just waiting around for that claim check or worse. So um, that's all we've got for today. We've been a little bit over, almost at 50 minutes.
We were
Again,
chatting.
yeah, very chatty. This is, hurricanes are intense. And I really wanted to kind of give it the time that we need to. We're here every Wednesday, noon Eastern. We'll be back next week talking about another topic. So please make sure you subscribe, click that notification button, go to Trella.io to learn more about what we're up to, more about our products. We do more than consult. We also create and invent innovative products and techniques. So learn about us and hit us up if you have any questions. We're here.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Contribute to Puerto Rico.
And contribute locally.
Locally, no government.
So, all right, everyone, mad peace, mad love, and thanks for joining.